Have you ever noticed the paradox? If attention builds connection, why do the men who give the least seem to get the most? Why does begging for love make you look smaller, while silence can echo louder than 1,000 declarations? Tonight isn't about cruelty, manipulation, or playing cold to break someone's heart. It's a mirror. We're going to step into the narrow space between craving and control and expose the quiet psychology that makes indifference look magnetic, even when it isn't. By the end of this journey, you won't be acting distant. You'll understand why earned attention hits harder than constant attention and how to stay ethical while you stop chasing validation. Here's the uncomfortable truth. The human brain doesn't fall for what is most available. It falls for what feels valuable. And value is not just what you are. It's what your time implies. When your attention is on tap, it becomes invisible. When your attention is chosen, it becomes gold. This is the frame we'll use. Not games, not punishment, not ghosting. Scarcity. What is rare feels precious. If your presence is guaranteed, it's taken for granted. Unpredictability, intermittent reinforcement, rewards that arrive sometimes wire the brain to anticipate, check, and chase. Reactance. When access is limited, desire pushes back to restore a sense of freedom. Perceived value. A man who isn't always available signals options, purpose, and standards without saying a word. Attachment patterns. Anxiety chases what withdraws. Avoidance rewards pursuit by pulling back. Your job isn't to exploit this, it's to stay secure. So, why do some girls fall for the guys who don't give them attention? Because attention is not neutral. It always carries a message about the giver. Constant availability can accidentally broadcast, "I have nothing more important than you. My world shrinks to your replies." That isn't romance, that's pressure. And pressure doesn't breed attraction, it breeds escape. Now, before you twist this into "ignore her and you'll win," understand the difference between withholding and having a life. Withholding is theater. Having a life is gravity. Withholding says, "I'm pretending not to care so you'll chase." Gravity says, "I'm centered, I'm busy, and when I give, it's real." One is a tactic, the other is a state. She often expects the script everyone plays. You chase, she evaluates. You keep proving, she decides. Your texts get longer as her replies get shorter. Your schedule flexes, hers gets complicated. This script is predictable, and predictable attention fades into the background like white noise. But when you step off that script, calmly, cleanly, without drama, something shifts. You don't disappear to punish. You simply stop overgiving to buy feelings. You show up in shorter, higher quality bursts. You invite instead of persuade. "I'd like to see you, Tuesday works. If not, no worries." You don't argue with mixed signals. You mirror them with space. You don't talk about standards. Your calendar is your standard. That shift creates uncertainty, and uncertainty wakes attention, not because you're being a jerk, but because the brain hates open loops. A quiet question begins to hum in the background of her day. Why isn't he trying like the others? Did I misread him? What does he have going on? Curiosity is the oxygen of attraction. When your life has texture, purpose, training, work you care about, friendships, hobbies, your attention arrives with a scent of choice. Choice is attractive. Let's be crystal clear. This isn't about negging, mind games, or hot and cold to destabilize someone. That's fragile masculinity wearing a mask. What actually pulls is grounded presence with edges. You're emotionally available, but not infinitely available. You can care without clinging. You can want without worship. You're warm, but not self-erasing. Because here's the counterintuitive law most people learn too late. The more you need your attention to be received, the less attractive it becomes. It lands as a transaction. Please validate me so I can feel okay. But when your attention is an overflow of a centered life, it feels like a gift, not a net. The same hey text can be irresistible or repelling, depending on the state it comes from. So if you've ever asked, why do girls fall for the guys who don't give them attention? Start here. It's rarely the coldness itself. It's the signal behind it. Men who aren't chasing often look like men who are choosing their mission, their standards, their time. And that signal of choice, of inner fullness, creates pull without a single game. In the next section, we'll break down the 4 forces that quietly rewire attraction: scarcity, unpredictability, reactance, and perceived value, and turn them into clean practices you can use without ever being cruel or fake. For now, hold one sentence. You don't need to become cold. You need to become costly. There is a moment when silence enters a room that used to be crowded with proof. It doesn't slam the door, it just stands there and breathes. She expected the flood, the midnight paragraphs, the apology you didn't owe, the 3 dots lighting up like a siren. She expected you to stretch yourself thinner and call it love, but you don't. Not because you've turned to stone, but because you've turned toward yourself. And the absence that follows is not empty. It is full of a presence she can't measure. When a man steps off the stage, where he was cast as the pursuer, he doesn't become cruel, he becomes unclassifiable. The script breaks. She had the lines ready. You chase, she evaluates. You keep proving, she decides. Predictability is a lullaby. It puts the brain to sleep. But silence, clean, calm, undesigned, wakes the brain like cold water on the face. Doubt starts to whisper at inconvenient hours. Why isn't he trying? Did I misread who he was? What else in him didn't I see? Doubt is not a villain. Doubt is gravity reminding us that what is always within reach rarely feels rare. You are not disappearing to punish. That is theatre, and theatre ages fast. You are cutting a quiet thread that tied your worth to someone else's replies. You are no longer financing certainty with self-abandonment. You move your attention from begging to building. Mornings for your body, hours for your craft, time with people who don't need you needy to feel important. And something simple happens. The seconds you give become chosen seconds. Chosen seconds weigh more. They land differently in the palm. They leave a print. Indifference is easy, dignity is not. Indifference is a mask you wear to make noise. Dignity is a state you earn in silence. You can be warm without being on call. You can be interested without auditioning. You can enjoy her presence without sacrificing your own. The difference looks small on a screen. Felt in a room, it's the difference between air and perfume. One is there because it has to be. The other is there because it was placed. She won't say it out loud, but the open loop bothers her. The brain hates unfinished melodies. So she hums you in the quiet, checks for your shadow in places you used to stand, scrolls a little slower past a song you once sent. It isn't punishment, it's physics. Scarcity sharpens attention. Unpredictability feeds anticipation. And the more she senses your time is directed by purpose instead of hunger, the more that purpose starts to glow around you like a border. Borders do not push people out. They let the right people in through a door that actually closes. Of course, some men hear all this and run to extremes, hot and cold like weather games, little cruelties sold as mystery. That is counterfeit power. It leaks. The real thing is quieter. It texts when present. It invites, it doesn't sell. Hey, Thursday at 7. If not, no worries. It leaves room for yes and space for no. It doesn't argue with ambiguity. It doesn't perform scarcity. It lives a life that naturally limits supply. This is not a trick, it's alignment. There will be a night when she wants to reach for you and realizes she can't do it the old way. The old way was entitlement dressed as chemistry. The new way would require reciprocity. That realization carries heat. Not the heat of conquest, but the heat of respect dawning late. You can almost hear the soft click of a lock inside a door that was always open. Access turns into invitation. Invitation turns into choice. Choice turns into value. Time does not heal. Time reveals. It reveals whether your attention was devotion or dependency. It reveals whether her indifference was clarity or habit. It reveals the shape of you when you stop trimming your edges to be easy to hold. And as hours stack where pleading used to be, your posture changes. You don't post provocations to be seen. You become visible anyway. Not louder, clearer, not colder, costlier. Costly doesn't mean unreachable. It means you are not a faucet anyone can turn. It means presence that can be lost because it is chosen. It means she can't pull on the rope of your nervous system and expect the same show. If she comes closer, it's because she walks, not because you crawl. If she stays, it's because she meets you at the level you live at now, not the level you begged at then. If she leaves, it's not a collapse, it's weather. Weather passes, foundations remain. And if you're tempted to break the silence just to feel the old safety of being needed, remember what that safety cost. You purchased it with apologies for boundaries that weren't crimes. You financed it with late-night availability that left your mornings empty. You wore your heart outside your body and called it virtue while bleeding on everything you touched. You don't owe another season to the same mistake. Not when you've paid in full. The paradox stays, but it stops hurting. Why do girls fall for the guys who don't give them attention? Because attention is never neutral. It carries the weight of the world it comes from. Attention from lack feels like a net. Attention from fullness feels like a gift. You are learning to give gifts again. Not to buy love, to honor value, yours first, then whoever can hold it without dropping you. By the way, if you're curious to go even deeper and integrate your shadows and light, check out the SIM Method ebook. It's a concise guide that can help you unlock your inner power in just 5 minutes a day. The link is in the first pinned comment below. There's a quiet moment that doesn't announce itself. It arrives like a hairline crack on glass. Almost nothing, almost invisible. But the crack grows, it always grows. It starts when she reaches for a comfort you used to offer and her hand closes on air. A song you showed her plays in the background of a cafe, and 5 seconds feel like a lifetime. A photo surfaces in a friend's story, and your absence has a shape now, not a hole, a contour. The mind hates contours it cannot fill. She won't call it regret at first. Regret is too noble. It begins as a small irritation that returns at inconvenient hours. Was I too sure? Did I read him like a book that I never finished? She replays scenes and finds new angles she ignored when certainty felt delicious. Your steadiness that she mistook for monotony. Your presence that she misnamed as predictable. What felt lukewarm from the inside begins to look like shelter from the storm she went chasing. The fire she wanted burned without warmth. The mystery she wanted hid nothing but absence. And suddenly, the simplest things you gave her, attention that landed, light in your voice when she appeared, the way your silence never punished, become expensive. Time reveals price tags no one saw at the counter. You didn't orchestrate this. That's what makes it powerful. There are no breadcrumb posts, no choreographed sightings, no half-truths designed to provoke. You went missing from her world because you returned to your own. You traded announcements for action. You stopped editing yourself for applause and learned to breathe in rooms where no one spells your name correctly. And it changed the texture of you. Not louder, clearer, not colder, costlier. The same walk you always had now carries a direction. The same laugh arrives from a deeper place. Even your silence has better posture. She hears about you without trying to. You appear in someone's casual sentence, not as a headline but as evidence. He's been building, he's been traveling, he's been reading, He's been quiet. Quiet is a strange word when it starts to mean presence. It means there's a center of gravity that doesn't need to be advertised. It means if anyone enters, they enter a space that already exists. No one is hired to be oxygen. At night, she scrolls with a slower thumb, not because she expects a signal, but because the loop remains open. The brain hates unfinished melodies. She tries to hum a new one, and the old tune sneaks back in. She checks the doors she once left unlocked and finds hinges. Hinges are not punishments. Hinges are how doors become doors. Access used to feel like a hallway. Now it feels like an invitation that could be lost. Loss creates value. Value creates attention. Attention creates a heat that feels suspiciously like longing. Do not mistake this for victory. If you make it about winning, you will shrink back into the boy who begged to be seen. This isn't a scoreboard. It's weather. Weather changes and you keep walking. If she moves toward you now, it won't be because you performed scarcity. It will be because she finally sees what your attention was pointing to all along. A man with edges, a life with boundaries, a heart that can hold warmth without leaking. There is a different kind of power growing in you, the kind that doesn't speak much. It refuses the theater of being unbothered and chooses the work of being whole. You learn to enjoy rooms where your name is not a password. You discover the uneven luxury of going to bed without reaching for a screen to prove you matter. You begin to love the way your own footsteps sound when no one is following. This is not loneliness. This is density, a life that weighs enough to press its own pages flat. Sometimes she will test the temperature of the door with the back of her hand, a harmless reaction to an old story, a like on a photo from a season you barely recognize. A message that says nothing and asks everything. The old you would have ripped the lock off with gratitude. The man you are becoming simply reads the weather and answers with climate. Hope you're well. Period. Not ice, clean air. You don't need to prove you moved on. You live on. Proof is what people demand when they don't believe themselves. And here is the paradox finally unclothed. Why do some girls fall for the men who don't give them attention? Because attention is only as irresistible as the world it comes from. When a man's attention grows from fear, it tangles. When it grows from fullness, it invites. Fear tries to trap. Fullness opens a gate and keeps walking. What is freely offered yet could be lost will always feel different from what is endlessly available and asks to be thanked. She may never say any of this. Pride is a careful curator. It arranges the gallery so that certain rooms remain closed to public view. But pride has a crack too, and you can hear it sometimes in the delay before she answers a harmless question, in the way she looks away when your name appears like weather in a conversation she didn't plan. She knows the difference now between a man who withholds and a man whose time is spoken for. One starves to feel powerful. The other eats and shares his table with those who arrive hungry and stay to cook. If you feel the old pull to perform, remember what that performance cost. You apologized for boundaries as if they were crimes. You were on call for emergencies that weren't real, offered proof to questions that were never honest. You kept your heart in the lobby and wondered why it felt drafty. That season is over. You are not bitter. You are better at inventory. You count what counts and price your time like it can be wasted, which means it can also be honored. There will be a day, maybe at a crosswalk, maybe at an airport line, when your eyes meet for a fraction of a second, and both of you understand without words. The story did not end where she left it. It kept writing itself in a language you learned after the credits. The man she remembers can't be found here, not because you burned him, but because you finally grew him. Growth is the one kind of loss that does not negotiate. If she calls it a mistake, that belongs to her. If she calls it timing, that belongs to the calendar. If she calls and you don't answer, it isn't cruelty, it's climate. People survive weather, people change in climate, and you You have become a climate, not a gust of need. The kind of season that makes things grow or go. And if you ask yourself in the quiet, what now? The answer is embarrassingly simple. Keep building the life that made your attention heavy enough to be felt and light enough to be free. Keep walking like someone whose feet know the way home. Keep your door a door, keep your yes a yes, and your silence a sentence that ends. The world understands punctuation even when it doesn't speak your language. So does desire. There's a point where wanting stops sounding like hunger and starts sounding like choice. Most people never get there because they keep rehearsing pain like a monologue, hoping the audience changes. You're done auditioning. The strange peace you feel is not numbness, it's power that doesn't need a microphone. You move through rooms like someone who finally realized that being easy to reach is not the same as being easy to keep. And that difference, quiet, almost impolite, rearranges the air around you. She senses it before she names it. It's in the way you answer slowly without being distant, the way you listen without leaning forward as if attention were a debt, the way your yes lands clean and your no lands kinder than most people's maybe. You didn't study lines for this. You learned silence. You learned to let spaces do their work. You learned that if presence is constant, the mind stops noticing it. If presence is chosen, the mind leans in. So you choose not to punish, to be precise. Precision makes desire honest. It kills the counterfeit currency that used to buy you seconds, the inflated compliments, the strategic availability, the little discounts on your standards that you called empathy. Empathy never demanded you disappear. What demanded that was fear. And fear is terrible with finances. It spends your future to rent a feeling for the night. You are paying with cash now. Cash is attention given after you've funded your own life first. Every so often, fate throws a small experiment your way. A message at midnight, a breadcrumb like on an old map, a test dressed as nostalgia. The boy would have sprinted. The man reads the weather. Good to hear from you. Period. No theatre. If she asks for clarity, you give it. If she asks for chaos, you give her the room to find it elsewhere. You don't compete with storms. You own climate. People change clothes for weather. They change lives for climate. That's the difference you're becoming. And still, the question that started all of this keeps echoing in the corridor. Why do some girls fall for the guys who don't give them attention? Because the body recognizes gravity before it recognizes grammar. The nervous system knows when attention comes from lack. It flutters, it bargains, it becomes a net. It knows when attention comes from fullness. It steadies, it breathes, it becomes a gate. Nets trap, gates invite. A net has to be watched, a gate has to be kept. One is panic. The other is stewardship. There is a version of you that once believed love meant volunteering as proof. Proof is noisy. It exhausts both sides. What you offer now is evidence, and evidence doesn't shout. Evidence is the way your calendar refuses to betray you. Evidence is the way you end the date 10 minutes early because you trust what momentum can do tomorrow. Evidence is the way you do not speak ill of anyone who is not in the room to defend themselves. Evidence is the way you keep promises no one can see. Evidence travels further than proof ever did. If she circles back, she will feel it immediately. The absence of negotiation, not cruelty, not indifference, just the end of the store that used to sell exceptions. She may try on the old coat of entitlement, the one that fit when you were smaller. It doesn't close now. Growth took the fabric and made a flag, and flags don't apologize for the wind. There's also mercy in you now, oddly. Not the mercy that hopes to be invited back, but the mercy that doesn't collect debts. You don't need an apology to sleep. You don't need a confession to walk. You needed those things when your story required a villain to justify your becoming. You've learned to become without witnesses. It's quieter. It's better. It lasts. People will misread this. They will call it game. They will call it arrogance. Let them. They are measuring with rulers that only work on boys. Men are measured by weight, what their presence adds to a room, what their absence teaches without words, how their boundaries can be felt without being announced. You add weight now, not pressure. Weight makes the floor beneath you honest. Pressure makes everyone around you smaller. The first builds, the second breaks. One night you'll catch your reflection in a window that didn't ask for it, half streetlight, half memory, and you'll notice the simplest miracle. You are not rehearsing conversations that may never happen. The theater closed. You left the city. You built a workshop where your hands can make things that survive weather. There's sawdust in your lungs, and you breathe easier anyway. This is what attention was supposed to be the whole time, an artisan's tool, not a billboard. Do not glorify the cold. Cold is a symptom. Clarity is the cure. If love arrives and it is worthy, you will not cage it with scarcity. You will give generously from a place that doesn't hollow you out. You will let it unfold in daylight, not in the alleys where you used to trade pieces of yourself for a rumor of belonging. And if love does not arrive, you will not starve. You learn to eat at your own table. You even learn to cook. So here is the last unpretty truth of this chapter. Some will fall for the man who does not give them attention, because attention was never the prize. They were starving for the state behind it. They wanted a center that did not wobble when looked at. They wanted someone who could hold a gaze without making it a leash. They wanted the quiet confidence of a life that could be joined but not consumed. That is what they felt when you stopped performing and started living. If she understands, she will step toward you as an equal, and your attention will expand without cost. If she doesn't, she will haunt the doorway and call it choice. Either way, your door remains a door. It closes. It opens. It does not fall off its hinges just because someone knocks with pretty knuckles. You learned carpentry. You built it to last. And you, if you are tempted to look back one more time, to measure the distance, to count the echoes, remember the lesson time keeps whispering. Endings are not verdicts. They are verbs. You ended begging. You ended theater. You ended the economy where your worth depended on a stranger's hour. That is why you walk differently now. That is why silence around you sounds like music. That is why your attention, when you choose to give it, feels like sunlight through a window no one thought could open. There comes a moment when the outside and the inside stop arguing and shake hands. Your words start sounding like your posture. Your timing matches your breath. You don't need to memorize lines anymore because your life delivers them for you. That's when escalation stops being a tactic and becomes the natural slope of two people who can hold heat without burning the house down. You don't rush that slope. You guide it. You let conversations breathe until they ask for air to be traded for time. You pick places where presence is easier than performance. Quiet tables, walks with moving scenery, rooms where your phone looks out of place. You pay attention to the small signals that used to fly over your head when you were starving. Does she lean in when you speak, or lean back when you sell yourself? Does she ask and wait, or ask and scroll? Desire is not a speech. It is a pattern of micro-yeses. When you feel those yeses stacking, you step half a beat forward, not a bar. The difference between pressure and leadership is one breath. Tests will come dressed as jokes, delays, small cancellations, a sudden cold front after a warm week. Weather. In the old season, you would have sprinted to close every window. In this one, you read the forecast and keep the climate. A late reply doesn't drag you into a story about worth. A reschedule doesn't cash out your dignity. You say, "No problem, another day works, Thursday or Saturday," and you go back to your life. The test wasn't about the answer. It was about the altitude of your nervous system. She wanted to see if your calm was borrowed or built. Borrowed calm collapses when watched. Built calm invites the gaze and remains. Sometimes the test is sharper. A tease about other options, a deliberately vague "we'll see." The urge to perform will reach for the mic. You let it pass. You don't audition for a role that requires you to forget your lines. You name what's real without edge. I'm in when this is clear. A door with hinges. You don't slam, you don't beg. You simply remind the house that rooms are for people and hallways are for passing through. Polarity lives where two centers meet, not where one disappears into the other. You don't manufacture mystery now, you maintain momentum. You lead the frame and leave room for her color. You propose the place and welcome her preference. You choose the time and remain flexible once. You end the night while the music is still good because you are protecting tomorrow from the exhaustion of today. That restraint isn't cold. It's faith in the next chapter. Excess is what we do when we don't trust returns. You trust them now. Touch, too, has a slope, not a checklist, not a script. Hands that talk before mouths try to sell. You read shoulders before you read lips. You notice if stillness gets deeper when you are closer or if it scatters. If it deepens, you stay a breath longer. If it scatters, you smile and give the room back to the air. That elasticity is its own language. It says, I can feel without taking. It says, I want without needing. It says, your no will not break me, and that is why my yes is safe. As weeks stack, attraction will try to turn into negotiation. It always does. People attempt to pin energy to the wall with labels made of urgency. You don't run from clarity, but you don't let fear hold the pen. When the talk appears, you don't recite your resume or ask for guarantees. You speak like a man who knows the difference between promise and pressure. I like where this is going. I want to keep building it. Period. You let the silence do part of the work. Real things can breathe under silence. Only fantasies need a ventilator. You will feel her watching for leaks. Do you keep your mornings like you said? Do you keep your word when no one is grading? Do you stay curious after the chase ends? Most men stop courting once certainty arrives because they were never courting a person. They were courting relief. Relief is a poor gardener. It lets weeds have the yard. You keep tending, not with spectacle, but with attention that notices the subtle changes. The book she mentioned in passing, the restaurant she wanted but wouldn't pick for herself, the way she laughs softer when days have been hard. This is not overgiving. This is precision. Precision is how polarity survives routine. Then there is the moment tests and tenderness sit at the same table. She will pull back for a day, and then come back with eyes that ask whether your door has hinges or chains. You answer without speech. You open, not wide, not shut, cleanly. You hold your ground and your warmth at the same time. That paradox is rare, and rare things make the mind wake up. In a world of extremes, measured men feel like mountains. Mountains don't chase weather, they shape it. If escalation stalls because life throws real obstacles, work, travel, illness, you don't let distance rewrite the story. You send presence in small, honest doses, a 3-line text that sounds like you, a call where you listen more than you prove, not a flood to compensate, not a drought to punish, weather, climate, patience. When presence returns in person, it has somewhere to land because you didn't erode the shore with anxiety. Do not confuse steadiness with stasis. Steadiness is movement with memory. It remembers what worked and repeats it with variation so the song stays alive. You take her back to a place you both loved, but you add a layer the second time, a view you skipped, a dessert you split with spoons, a story you saved. Continuity without copy-paste. That's how heat matures without burning through fuel it will need later. All of this only works because you are not building a performance, you are building a pattern. Patterns survive moods. A bad day won't make you punish. A great day won't make you promise what your life cannot keep, and that consistency is what turns attention into atmosphere. She stops measuring you by moments and starts measuring you by climate. People change clothes for weather, they change homes for climate. If she presses a boundary to see whether your center is for sale, your answer is still handwriting, not a billboard. You don't escalate volume, you escalate clarity. I want this, and I want it clean. Clean ends arguments faster than clever ever did. Clean reminds both of you that attraction is oxygen, not a leash. Clean is why she can relax into your presence without losing herself, and why you can say no without losing her. There will be a night when the old pattern tries to resurrect itself, the urge to overstay, to explain, to buy the next hour with a little piece of your edge. That is where the outside and the inside meet one last time and decide the rest of the story. You stand, you smile, you end while the music still has one more chorus. You trust the return, you trust yourself more than you fear the silence. And silence, once again, sounds like music. If anyone asks you later how you kept the spark without turning it into smoke, you won't be able to give them a list. You will tell them you learned to be a climate. You led softly. You let space do part of the seduction. You chose moments over monologues. You kept your door a door and your yes a yes. You escalated by breath and not by bargaining. You stayed warm and you stayed costly. You remembered that attention is never neutral. It carries the weight of the world it comes from. Yours finally weighs enough to be felt and light enough to be free. She doesn't fall for a lack of attention. She falls for the gravity behind it. When your world is full, your attention arrives as a choice, not a plea, and choice reads as value. Don't get colder, get costlier. Build a life that makes your yes rare and clean, and notice who leans in when you stop begging to be seen.